Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's August 24th, 2021, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a question that I've been getting regularly on some of my videos, and it's about brown rot. I also get the question about black rot with grapevines, but brown rot affects our stone fruits, our cherries, our peaches, our plums, our combination of apricots and plums, all of those different variations as well. So if there's stone fruit, they can be affected by brown rot. And I got a gentleman from Pakistan who asked a question about, geez, I've got this, it's taking over in my gardens, it's destroying all my peach trees. And I hope to do a more thorough video this coming winter. So I'm not going to use all the scientific names, I'm just going to use some common names because that's all I can recall right at this moment. And I just want to at least get this video out to help people understand my approach to the system. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story about the history of how I have been dealing with inappropriately or inadequately dealing with the problem in our first food forest. So as is the case in just about everything in life, there's multiple factors that contribute to the manifestation of a disease process. You can have a disease process going on in your body and not be aware of it, same as can happen in a fruit tree, and it not demonstrating clinical manifestations, obvious changes and all. So really observation and interaction, permaculture principles, are so important. It's really taking a very close look at it, at the trees that we're talking about. So the first thing I'll say is my whole problem started from inadequate research beforehand as far as establishment of my first food forest. So as you've been watching the videos, our property is all gravel with weedy soil on the surface of it, but really bony gravel and all. So my approach in the first food forest was putting a couple of feet of wood chips on there and sheet mulching and getting a variety of different species and doing companion plants around those plants that I wanted to grow. So various fruit trees and berry bushes in the first food forest. So I did that and we had some decent success with it right off the bat. However, we had an incident several years ago where we had deer rub, where deer take their antlers and they rub the velvet off their antlers and they do a lot of destruction to the trunks of the trees and to the main branches that come off. This, in essence, opens up a wound on the tree. The cambium, that green vascular tissue containing the xylem and phloem, the circulatory system, one's viable, one's just a structural component. And once those things are destroyed, that allows other opportunistic infections to gain a foothold into the tree itself. So we can have some saprophytic fungi going in and breaking down some of the woody material. We can have fungi that are going to go ahead and invade the circulatory system as well. And then as a result, we can get some sap and material leaking out of the tree, and we see the bark starting to make some changes. And that's an observational skill that we need to develop when managing a food forest. We can see the bark being disrupted and we see this, it looks like a primordial ooze. Instead of it being simple sap, it turns into this initially gelatinous and then thick material, and then can turn into something almost like amber. And that material is a viable food source for other opportunistic infections to get in. Now, when we talk about brown rot, it is a fungal infection that's considered a pathogen. And I consider it more of an opportunistic pathogen in a sense. So if everything else is going well with the tree, with the soil and all, then the chances of that pathogen having the tree become susceptible to it is much less. So there's with the brown rot, there's two different spore forms that are created. One that will get into the blossoms and get on the surface of the fruit. And I know I'm going through this rapidly, I apologize. But these two spore forms can actually, one form can, in the early spring, get into the blossom of the what's going to become the fruit in the future, and then the entire fruit later on, as it matures, you see that fuzzy fungal consumption making its way through the skin of the fruit itself. But you have the other form that's actually in these places like the canker, the cytospora canker, which is a different fungal disease that's gotten into the circulatory system of the plant. So if you're at the point where you can see these obvious cankers, or you see this ooze coming out of the sap and this gelatinous material growing there, that area needs to be cut away or the tree needs to be removed. I'm sorry, but that is the best situation. But what I'll say, so when we're pruning, we always want to get rid of diseased, dysfunctional, damaged limbs as well. But we want to prune and use good clean pruning tools. Whatever it is, we want to prune at the right time of year, and I made videos in the past about that for enhancing more vegetative growth, or trying to control vegetative growth so that we can get the form and structure of the tree that we want. Before all of this, we have to look at our food forest or our peach trees as being an ecosystem. So if we have just a bunch of peach trees in a row, like we see in the States here, we have, if you drive around the countryside, you'll see, whole fields of apple trees, or whole fields of pear trees, or whole fields of peach trees in some locations. Nature doesn't like a monoculture. So when we plant too much of one thing, that just is not a healthy environment. That's saying, hey, come on over here. Any obvious pathogens, any other parasites that like this fruit, come on over here. You can just jump right next door and get to the next plant there. So that isn't natural. So we try to avoid that by putting maybe a pear tree, an apple tree, an apricot tree, and then certainly putting something like our other support trees as well, and and our cherry trees. So we want to keep our stone fruit trees separated from each other, and putting in our other support of our guilds, our different herb. We get all the different layers of a food forest. So we've got ground cover, we've got the root layers down below. It could be garlic, it could be anything that we want. We grow horseradish in our food forest, garlic, chives. We grow various small berry bushes. We do the nitrogen fixing plants as well. So it's so important to look at our food forest when we're establishing them as an ecosystem. And an ecosystem has components that support each other indirectly. And I made videos before about soil. So we need to look at, when we're looking at an ecosystem, we have to think about the geology. So that's the sand, silt, and clay. And I made a video about that, some of the properties of the sand, silt, and clay, the geological aspects of it. I've talked about the microbial communities in many different videos, but if you look at the video on soil succession, where we go from a weedy lawn, which is bacterially dominated, and we finally get to a point where we get a mature forest where it's fungally dominated soil. So there's videos on that. So understanding what the necessary requirements are for the plants that we want to grow in it, and not overdo it, not just have too many of one group of plants, too many peach trees or too many apple trees all in one area, where pests or opportunistic infections can just jump from tree to tree to tree. They don't have to travel any distance. That's something. And certainly I've made videos about the mycorrhizal fungi. So the mycorrhizal fungi, when we're putting trees into an area, we want to inoculate the roots of the tree with the spores from mycorrhizal fungi, because they can really reach out and expand the root surface area to all the other plants and microorganisms surrounding the area. They really drastically expand the root functional surface area, so that they can act as like an Amazon truck. You know, say, oh, you need this, we'll go over here and get what we need from this place, and we'll go over there. And we have to think also about, let's say we want to put some nitrogen fixing plants in and around in our guild, in our polyculture, where we have several different species all around that fruit or nut tree. And we want to make sure that if we're going to put the nitrogen fixers there, then we want to use the appropriate rhizobacterium to help fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere and get it into the root surface. And then the mycorrhizal fungi can go ahead and take that nitrogen and feed it to the apple tree, and then feed back the simple sugars to feed to that lupine plant, or whatever, or the pea or the bean or whatever it is. There can be, or the clover. They can all be exchanging their networks throughout each other, and have this expansive resources, this resiliency. So we don't want to just put one nitrogen fixer in with this polyculture. We want to put a couple of different types of nitrogen fixers. We want to put in, certainly mining. Some people will think about some of the deep tap-rooted plants and all. And some of these weeds that we have that are already in our gardens can actually be beneficial. So they help to break up the ground and help with the extraction of minerals from the geology. I'm not someone who's a proponent of fertilizers or of various herbicides, insecticides, various pesticides. I really don't like using those. So certainly one of the things I'm sure I'll get comments about is, why not just use Cap 10? It's so easy to control. Well, when we use a fungicide, whenever we use any sort of biocide, like an antibiotic, we promote antibiotic resistance. If you use it enough and use it over and over again, we're going to promote antibiotic resistance, and that's a huge problem in veterinary and human medicine. And when we use fungicides, and when we're using a fungicide, they're not specific, so it can kill all of the beneficial fungal organisms that are in the environment as well. So I know I've gone on quite a bit here, and so if we're in the situation where things are bad, and you see, my peach trees are bad, my nectarine trees are bad, I've got this brown rot in all of them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and I'm going to really examine each tree closely. Right now there's still leaves on the trees. Are the leaves being affected? Looking for disruption of the smooth bark surface. Are there signs of the canker, the cytospora canker there, another fungal disease? If they're there, prune away all those. If it's on the main trunks and all, maybe consider taking that tree out, because it's in the circulatory system of that plant at that point. And who knows if that's exchanging in the soil beneath the surface of the soil as well. It hurts like hell to think about, geez, several years I've been working on these trees, they all did great, and then we get here. And I said in videos before, I wish I had done this earlier, and there are many times, like, I know enough to walk through the gardens and make sure that I'm not seeing any new pests or any new diseases. I know enough to look at the timers every day and make sure, but I went a couple of weeks, and so we lost our whole strawberry beds. With the timer needing to be reset. I just thought that it would work out okay, and went out and worked in the forest and all, and I messed up. And I've been negligent in the past, and I have not pruned the trees appropriately, not trained the trees appropriately. I haven't identified the cytospora canker in the past. I haven't adequately pruned out all the areas, and I didn't just bite the bullet and say, this tree goes. So those are examples of some of the mess ups that I've done. And I still make mess ups regularly, and you're going to see videos of me making, making these, you know, type 1 errors. You make an error like this, and that opportunistic infection, if the debris isn't cleaned up, if the fruit is left there on the tree or on the ground that contains that brown rot, then you're just leading more seeding spores, and there's two types of spores that can be released and affect the neighboring trees as well. And certainly the insects and the birds and mammals are going to take this fruit and move it to different places in your food forest. They hear a loud noise in the area and they've got something in their mouth. They move 20 feet to the side at the base of a cherry tree, and we have an opportunity for more of these spores to be released and into the environment. So it's understanding the ecosystem, avoiding monocultures, trying to think about how we're going to build our soil so that we have the soil structure, we have all the appropriate microorganisms in the soil. We have to think about an ecosystem. We have to think about the geology, the microbiology, the microbiome, the various plant species that help as well, and all of the beneficial microorganisms that go from our bacteria and fungi to the bacterial and fungal consuming nematodes, the protozoa, and so on and so forth. And then our insects, and then our small mammals and all. There's opportunities to learn tremendous volumes of information, but if we take that intellectual capital as we're learning this, and we develop the skills by learning how to prune appropriate and our observational skills, we can be very successful with our food forests. And I'm a good example of what not to do. I've done just about all the things that I've mentioned here, and I still make some of these mistakes as well. So I'll try to make a video this winter when I have time to sit down and get some video of some of the old images and all, and some of the new ones as well. But always plan for the future. Remove the dead, diseased, dysfunctional plants. If you can't prune it away, and you got to clean up the ground around it as well, and you got to think about what's the best plant to put in this place. Is this a place where I know that if I put another stone fruit in this area, that it's probably going to be infected? Or is this a place that I want to put an apple tree, a non-stone fruit plant in this area? So I hope this video has been of value. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Certainly, I don't have anything against anybody who's going to use the fungicides. I know that that's the most common way of dealing with it. I've had lots of them just use Cap 10. And I understand that. I just don't always take I just don't take that route, and I don't always take the easy route, as you can see from my life here as well. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate your comments and your contributions to the channel. It really is beneficial, and it does my heart good. And you may be helping someone else out with all the comments that you're leaving and all. Just be thoughtful and be respectful. That's all we need. Thanks so much for watching. Have a super fantastic day, and grow a food forest. It's real good for you. Bye-bye now.